1370.
Hour number 3 of our program. Welcome back. I'm Bill Shanks. Thanks for being with us. 5:01. Hope you're having a good day. Now let's talk a little basketball. NBA got started last night with, 4 games. And tonight, the Atlanta Hawks will tip off another season. Another season without Dominique Wilkins and Doc Rivers and Randy Whitman and Tree Rollins and Kevin Willis. I miss those 5 guys. Dadgummit. I know another guy who misses them, Jason Walker, humanhighlightblog.com. It's amazing to me, Jason Walker, that I am talking to you this week because if you remember correctly, what was that, 2002 when Terrence Edwards dropped the ball and I said I would never talk to you anytime near the Georgia-Florida game because you are a Florida fan, and I was watching the game. Me and you and Skip Sato were watching the game at, where were we at? Jocks and Jill's in the CNN Center?
Yep.
Jocks and Jill's in the CNN Center, and, of course, you were trying to be diplomatic when Terrence dropped the ball because his bookie was coming through for him, and I said, I'll never watch the game with you again, and that has never happened. So it's amazing, and if you're going to get on here and tell me, well, I think y'all got a chance, I'm going to hang up on you.
Well, I don't want you to hang up on me, but I think that the Gators, I came to you, I was on the show 2 years ago, and I told you that you guys were going to take advantage of our young defense, go deep, and beat us, and you sure did that. And I'm saying I'm not calling for an upset this year.
Okay.
Because you guys don't have Matthew Stafford and no Sean Moreno, obviously.
That's right.
But
we sure don't.
I think the way the Gators are playing, I think that it'll keep Georgia in the ballgame, and anything can happen.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're drinking too early today. All right, let's talk basketball. Hard to believe we were just saying in the last hour, today is the 14th anniversary of the Atlanta Braves winning the World Series on the same day that this year the World Series starts. Hard to believe the NBA season got tipped off a day before the World Series. That's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't seem right. It didn't seem right to be watching the Celtics and the Cavs last night when we hadn't even seen any of the World Series yet. So, yeah, that's definitely an odd sequence of events. But hey, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just glad that they've tipped off the NBA season. I'm ready to get going.
Well, I am too, and obviously with the additions the Hawks have made, particularly Joe Smith, Jamal Crawford. I think bringing Mike Bibby back, drafting Jeff Teague. This is a team that, obviously the Eastern Conference is a conference that everybody is going to watch, with Shaq coming back and joining Cleveland and knowing how Boston has performed, knowing how good Orlando has been, and the Hawks, can they repeat as the 4th seed? I mean, you always want to try to do better than you did the year before, but it may be a little more challenging this year because of how much better the conference is. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, it's anytime you take a look at a team like Washington who won last night, and they get Gilbert Arenas back, and they've made some additions to their squad, and you look throughout the East, and every team, you would figure the Sixers are going to improve a little bit, and you would think that'd be the case. But I think when you look at the Eastern Conference, certainly, I don't think much is really going to change. I mean, you've got Cleveland, Orlando, and Boston. I think are the clear top 3 in the East, and then you've got a bunch of teams jockeying for the top of the second tier, which is considerably below that. And I still believe the Hawks are the top team in that second tier. There's not much. You talk about the off-season moves, which really all it created was a good off-season. It made it interesting to be a Hawks fan during the off-season, but I don't think it's going to translate to a whole lot different on the court, except maybe bringing in Jamal Crawford, solids up, getting the production that they got last year from Flip Murray. But other than that, I don't think much is really going to change in the East for the Hawks, which you can interpret as optimistic news that the Hawks won't really. I really don't think the Hawks will slide back. Mm-hmm. But in terms of taking the next step, I don't think that's going to happen.
So you don't think that adding Jamal Crawford and the big men off the bench, Smith and Collins, and then drafting Teague can make this team go from 47 wins to above 50?
No, I think the Crawford move was interesting in that you had a good season from Flip Murray last year, and but it was a real aberration when you look at Murray's career. It was really only the 3rd such season in his entire career. So it was unlikely that he was going to repeat that kind of production. So by bringing in Jamal Crawford for really nothing, for AC Law and a pretty finished Speedy Claxton, all you really did was guarantee that level of production for next year, because Crawford has pretty much maintained that level of production his whole career. So all they did was just kind of ensure that we're not going to lose anything. Like if they brought Flip Murray back and he bombed like the rest of his career, other than the 3 seasons he did actually do pretty good. they made sure that they kept that in place. So that was good. By bringing in Crawford, they kind of secured where they were. And obviously bringing Bibby. Drafting Jeff Teague depends on how many minutes he gets, but I don't know if his skill set really fits in to what the Hawks like to do on offense, which is really isolate, dribble, pass, and shoot from the outside. Teague is not a spectacular shooter from the outside. So if he's there to kind of fill in and play the Mike Bibby role in the offense, I don't know if that's such a good fit. They're going to have to turn him loose a little more, get him out in open space, and let him use his speed to really make Teague not have a negative impact on the team this year. And as far as the big men go, Joe Smith is really filling in for Solomon Jones. Solomon really didn't play all that much last year, so it's nice to have a guy that's a little more dependable and consistent rather than the erratic Solomon Jones. But really, that shouldn't have too much of an impact on the team. And then Collins is basically the fifth big man on the team, and although he was a defensive guy a few years ago, he's probably lost that fastball a little bit in terms of what he can do, although he is a huge body. But really, in terms of impact, all those moves, like I said, all it did was really make for an interesting offseason. Don't think it's going to make a difference really either way in the standings.
Jason Walker, our guest, humanhighlightblog.com is the website. All right, let's get back to Jeff Teague for a minute. We saw him score at times in the preseason. I know you never know what that means, but you said they may need to turn him loose a little bit. Do you have confidence that if it looks like he should be given that opportunity, Mike Woodson will do that? Because I don't.
No, I don't either. That's why I say I think that's what they would have to do for Teague to really, not have a negative impact on the team this year. He's a rookie, and being a rookie point guard in the league is somewhat kin to being a rookie quarterback. It takes a little while to adjust and get into the league. He's got a very nice touch with the ball in terms of passing. He's a little more skill in that area than I thought he would. He scored in the preseason, which is kind of like hitting home runs in spring training. Mm-hmm. You really don't know what that means if it's quality competition you're facing. But if he isn't, if they plug him into the offense to where Mike Bibby is, I don't think that's going to work too well. I think teams will start leaving him open, and he's really just going to have to be allowed to attack, penetrate, dish, get out in the open floor, that kind of thing when there's running. And it remains to be seen if Woodson will do that. I will say this about that. We'll say this about Woodson and Jeff Teague. Throughout the draft period, GM Rick Sun made sure that everybody knew that Mike Woodson was a part of this draft process. And on draft night, made sure it sure looked like Woody's footprints were all over the draft pick of Teague, unlike AC Law.
Right.
So he might have some investment in getting Teague into some positions to excel, to make that look better. Because remember, this is the last year of Mike Woodson's contract.
Well, that's right, and that leads into my next question. Good segue. I mean, you talked about how the moves that were made over the offseason may not necessarily reflect a record better than last year's in the regular season. So could that be up to what Mike Woodson does? Because, look, okay, they got into 47 wins. They got into the second round of the playoffs. But there remain questions in the fan base and around the league of whether or not Mike Woodson is the coach that can take this franchise to the next level. Now is his chance to kind of prove it because, look, he's always gotten a little defensive when you try to bring up the negative with him. And he brings up, how it started when they were, at 13 wins 5 years ago or whatever, and how they built up every year. But now he's got to go from 47 and to get better. That's going to be tougher for him. So is this a lot on him this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at what the Rick Sun did in the offseason. He pretty much doubled down on the talent that he had. He brought in Crawford to kind of replicate what he had with Flip Murray last year. He re-signed Bibby. They re-signed Marvin Williams. They did a lot of things to keep things down. So it makes it sound like he feels like we have the talent to win big. But yet he didn't extend Woodson's contract, which makes you think that, okay, well, he's doubling down on the talent, but maybe not the philosophy. So it definitely means that Woodson is on the hot seat, and I really believe, teams do make switches, even though they have winning records, even though they make the playoffs. Teams do make switches if they believe that the philosophy that's in place isn't the right one to take them higher. And I think what you'll see this year is if this style that Woodson plays, if the defense and the offense that they do doesn't scale up again this year, in other words, they don't win more games, they don't advance further in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think there's a real chance because of what we saw by doubling down on the talent, but not on the coaching, that they could make a change.